I stuck a movie quote in an email launching a new feature. And I said, if you got it right, we'll send you an invisible medallion, which we do because it's invisible and it's easy to send via an email. So like
What is the cost to you for those
this
per
is,
unit?
we get a really good deal on
You get a
those.
good
Yeah.
deal.
Invisible
They're
Yeah.
medallions.
beautiful though.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry Seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about
Yes.
your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hersh Redmond.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
We're doing one of those things today where we're in the middle of a conversation before we even introduce the guests. Is that right, Robert?
Here's my question.
Okay.
Why a pencil instead of a pen?
Oh, ooh, nice.
Right.
Why a
Yes.
pencil? For those of you who are not
I'm a
watching this on YouTube, you need to get your YouTube up. And yeah, so Allison and Robert have pens. I have a pencil. I have a pencil because sometimes I do a lot of nomenclature around my to-do list. So
Uh-huh.
for example, one of the things I want to work on today is a stage show. It's a stage show, but it's also a keynote.
Mhm.
But I wrote a title for it and I didn't like the title and I immediately erased it and wrote a different title, which I also don't like. So now I have, the luxury of not wasting. I hate
Right.
crossouts.
Mm.
Crossouts make the page kind of marred and
Uh-huh.
and defaced. I like the evolution. Also, it fits with the yes brand notion, which is that we follow the yes and rule of improv and we always build on what we have. We never really cross out or say no.
I love it.
That's a
Yeah.
really great answer. I'd say we're team cross out. I'd say
Well,
I
there
get
was
satisfaction out of crossing out, but yours is a little different because you're crossing
That's
out
okay.
like yeah.
I
there was a
I
woman
Pen.
there was
I
a
get
woman
it.
who worked at our prior company, CrowdRise, and she was so obsessed with crossing off items on her to-do list and this I didn't understand, that she would have an idea and she would write it down and then do it and cross it off sort of all in real time because
I
she
can
loved
relate to
crossing
that.
off.
Yeah, I don't
I
think
can
that's
relate
as
to that.
uncommon as you think.
But I
Interesting.
actually use, I don't know if this will show up. I actually use checks
Oh, I
Oh,
like that.
instead of cross out. So I like the idea of completing the thing. And now I messed up the whole focus. Now my focus is screwed
It's
up.
even better.
Okay, I'm trying to fix can you
the
fix my
new
focus?
filter. There we go.
Okay, let me just pause here for a moment in the proceedings to introduce my guests to the listeners. If you haven't read the show notes or the title, my guests today are Robert Wolfe and Allison Capaldi, Zeck, and we will explain what Zeck is, what the Zeck is, but trust that it's designed to be fun, transformative, and boring. And but not really boring you described it as historically really boring. Oh, it's historically boring.
Historically,
Okay,
really.
I get it.
Board meetings are historically boring.
But what an
meetings.
ad.
Board meetings are historically boring. The other way I was reading it when I first read it this morning was hysterically boring, but that's because
Oh,
I have already spoken to Robert, who is hysterical in many ways. They previously worked on the companies Moosejaw and CrowdRise, and we can talk about that. Robert's the founder. Allison runs brand. We don't really do titles here, which is great because I don't really have a title either. I just try to be the best Hersh that I can be. And if
Yeah.
if I can accomplish that, but we're going to talk about the Zeck brand and we're going to talk about what really makes a good brand and a useful product for people. And anyway, I'm really happy to have you guys here. And as you can see, we're already off to the races in this conversation. But Allison, why don't we start with you? Set us up a little bit for this conversation.
Well, Robert and I have worked together for many, many years, and I think the through line through all of our endeavors has been to make not only the workplace that we work in fun, but the experience for the customer fun. I think we've historically worked in industries that you could say have been boring historically. So originally Moosejaw started, it was an online and brick and mortar equipment, but like Patagonia Arc'teryx, mountaineering equipment and clothing. Back then, that was kind of a serious thing. Like rock climbers were serious. They took their gear serious. Everything was serious. You had to go to a serious rock climbing place. We flipped the model on that and made it fun. Then move on. This is a super quick snapshot. Move on to CrowdRise, where it was about giving back. So charity, which is historically not boring, but sad. You know, that Sarah McLachlan commercial. It's like, I will remember you
Oh,
and the
yeah.
puppies and the whole thing. Like giving back felt sad and just kind of sometimes a
Burdensome.
chore, sometimes like a chore. And so we flipped the mold on that. And now moving into Zeck, the boardroom, which really stems a lot from Robert's actual board experience. It's a terrible experience for anyone who's been in a board meeting. You're basically rereading something, a deck, for example, that's been handed to you 2 days prior. You're rereading it live in a meeting. There's no real forward thinking motion on anything, and it's terrible. And so we try to create these brands throughout all of these companies that level up the basis of the brand, what we're actually trying to do, but also the experience dealing with us and the experience internally too of creating a culture that can reflect a brand wholeheartedly to our customers.
Well, as unsurprisingly well said and stated. I am curious now about how Zeck does that. I don't have like a real frame of reference because I'm unprepared in that sense. Yeah, I got the feeling that this would be a better conversation if I didn't try to list anything, you
Yeah, we
know.
we like total chaos.
But whichever one of you wants to explain how it works and how it makes life more livable in the
Yeah.
boardroom.
So the typical process, and again, to Al's point, we lived it at our prior companies, is the leadership team at a company or a nonprofit will spend 150 hours putting together a presentation for the board. The presentation is always done in a deck. And if you think about, and there is a place for PowerPoint. So a TED Talk, for example, where you're just presenting, a PowerPoint works fine. But to build something that you want to be collaborative, that is not what a slide deck was built for. And so in our case, we would spend all of this time to build a presentation that was bad. And you certainly couldn't read it on your phone. So just anyone out there, try to take the last deck that you've received and pull it up on your phone. You can't read it. And then lastly, and Al referred to this, the typical process is you as a board member receive the deck, and then everyone gets together for this supposedly grandiose meeting. And in our case, we were flying to New York or LA or San Francisco, getting into the room with this amazing we had these famous board members, and we would spend 3-4 hours literally rereading them the deck that they had already read. So start to finish, the entire process was a waste of time for everyone involved. We genuinely thought we were the only ones who were bad at it. It was only after our companies were acquired and we got out there in the world that we saw everyone was dealing with this angst. And we built Zeck to solve that. So at its core, we're saving leadership teams time, and not 10% of their time, more like 80% of their time. They're not using a deck. Our customers use a Zeck, which is a collaborative workspace. So it works perfectly on your phone. It's entirely engaging. And then most importantly, the way the software is built, when you get into the live meeting, you're no longer rereading anything. It's all strategic. It's all forward thinking. So that's what we built.
So you're saying you're not rereading anything. It's in the moment, I gather. It's kind of an experience that happens in the moment, as opposed to literally just covering stuff that people are already know or didn't really care about to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too in the weeds, but
Yeah.
the way the system works is the leadership team and the board are connecting asynchronously in Zeck prior to the meeting. So you're getting ahead of all the bullshit and minutia that you
Ah,
would typically talk about live. So your live meeting is spent talking about what will actually help the company as opposed to being entirely backward looking. And it goes even further because the process today is so broken that there's this natural antagonism between the leadership team and the board. So it becomes this cycle where everyone continues to disengage and even dislike each other because the system is so terrible. We're flipping that entirely. And the
got it.
feedback has been pretty awesome. I mean, it's working.
Like if you
Now,
sent a questionnaire or a get to know you before this podcast, for example, and we could go back and forth on it and you can explain everything visually on the Zeck, and then we would go back and forth and kind of tie things up like this is my title, this is where we're from, and we didn't have to talk about it on this call. And so on this call we're talking about really fun stuff. It kind of weeds out all of that. That's one feature of Zeck, the engagement piece, so that you can kind of come to this call prepared. You know a lot about us and we have a good rapport beforehand. And then we're in it to solve problems and to really get the audience what they need. That's just kind of a little.
yeah, that would have been great. Would have been a great way
New
of
business
doing it,
model.
Allison.
New
But
business model. A new business
you know
model.
what?
Sometimes you would have been able
Well,
to tell if I looked at it because there's analytics too. So you could be like, Allison, you didn't look at the materials beforehand. Like, can you come prepared? And I would have been like, oh, shoot. I don't know what kind of podcast we're doing here, but oh, shoot. And I
no,
would have
you can
gone.
say shit. It's just
Okay.
now that you've said it, that kind of we just have cleared the decks of the audience that would have, taken offense.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
We don't have those filters.
yeah, we're not concerned about them.
Okay.
Because if they gave a shit, they would have
Great.
insisted on Zach. What I like about it is that it's taking seriously the process that heretofore has really been undervalued, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Now, of course, there's this kind of bragging rights to having a celebrity involved in your brand in the form of Edward Norton. That always, that's an interesting topic to me in general, where, having the involvement of someone who is known for something else, for being an actor, director,
Right.
someone who's not necessarily known for being in the boardroom or being a developer. How did that happen?
Yeah, I'll tell the quick version of the story. So Edward and I, we started our prior company, CrowdRise, together. And the way that came together is because I'm lifelong friends with Edward's, it was his girlfriend at the time, now his wife. Her name's Shauna Robertson. So Shauna was Judd Apatow's partner at Apatow Productions. So her squad of actors, I mean, she launched the career of Jonah Hill, Seth Rogen, Kristen Bell, Mila Kunis. I mean, it's a long list. And when we were thinking about how to reinvent the giving space and make it fun and interesting and social, I mean, if you think back to 2010, it was actually tactless to tell people how you gave back to charity. That people didn't do that. And Shauna and I started talking about how can we flip this to make it more interesting. And Edward at the time was raising money by running the New York Marathon for one of his causes called the Maasai Wilderness Conservation Trust. And we ended up building a team and a campaign for that cause. And our goal was to raise $75,000. And through all these ideas that my brother, Shauna, Edward, and I had together, we ended up raising 1.2 million. And that served as a case study for CrowdRise. And we said, hey, this is crazy. Let's build this. Let's take this idea and build it for everyone. And we sort of all fell in love, did CrowdRise together. CrowdRise is now a part of GoFundMe. And we were away together, and I had to leave for a board meeting. And I came back and literally said to Edward, that was the worst 3 hours of my life. Do you remember the scene in Fight Club when you were punching yourself in the face? I feel like that's what everyone in the boardroom felt like. And we started researching the board space and came to the conclusion that no one is addressing the kind of problems that people are having. And then we started Zeck.
What's the long story?
The long story would really get into all the craziness, because like our and Alan, we did all this together. Our slogan, and again, you have to think about the background of the giving space. And our slogan was, if you don't give back, no one will like you. And that was plastered on every single page, from the charity down the street that you've never heard of to Red Cross, UNICEF, American Cancer Society. And when we launched, we were laughed out of the room. People said, there's no way you can have fun while raising money for serious causes. And we had a conviction that that wasn't the case, and that if people actually liked giving back, then they would do it more often and raise more money for the causes they cared about, and also share it. And obviously you can't scroll on social for more than 10 seconds without seeing how someone is giving the cause. Yeah, we think we had a little bit to do with that. Now we're trying to have the same kind of impact at Zeck, but that was the longer story.
But I do love the grounded approach that you all take to this stuff, which is, that humor, fun, these things diffuse the pretense. When people feel like you're doing something, if you're, virtue signaling, or, you're doing something good for the props, and all of that, that stuff is just baked in. There's no way to avoid, if Leonardo DiCaprio tries to do something about the environment, there's going to be a contingent that says, oh, he's just looking for attention, or he just wants to feel important, or whatever it is. So you can't do a good thing without being punished in some way. So you might as well take the piss out a little bit and just, have a little fun with it. The thing with the boardroom is, if the boardroom being stuffy or being boring or being all that's already baked in. So all that's left to do is have fun with the seriousness of it. Same thing with Moosejaw, with the seriousness. So that seems to be,
I mean, we did it by accident when we first started. We weren't purposefully trying to. I mean, I'm a big believer in luck, and I think we got really lucky. When we launched, we weren't purposefully saying, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z to drive virality. But once we saw that it was working, then we started to press it. But I think there's a difference between paying a celebrity $100,000 or $2 million to post about your brand versus having a celebrity be a co-founder. And even in the case of Leonardo DiCaprio, I mean, he has his own cause and used our platform for it. And they were doing some incredibly innovative work. And I think it's bullshit that, that one would attack him. But I also get it. I don't remember if it was either Robert or JFK said, no matter what you do, 20% of the people are going to hate you for it. Right. So at some point you just got to press it and not care.
It's actually, I think, a natural reaction that we have as human beings to be a little bit dubious about do-gooders,
Right.
And I like take it as it comes. I that's why I admire what you're doing, because I feel like, you're accepting, you're anticipating a certain reaction. And Allison, you can maybe chime in on this aspect of branding and messaging, where, is part of what you do, anticipating what the audience is going to feel about a certain product.
Yeah. I mean, our branding is pretty much, I was just telling Robert this morning that, so every week Robert goes to the post office and sends a picture to us, like, look, I'm at the post office. Don't ask. We have a very interesting rapport within the company, all of us. And I said, I'm going to post about this on LinkedIn under.
You didn't say it. You just did it.
I said, I'm
You
posting
said to
about it.
yourself.
I
I'm
said
gonna
to
post.
myself, because Robert would never want me to post his face. He's probably never looked at the post. He's probably doesn't even know what it looks like. But it's our top performing content right now, is that it's Robert at the post office. I wrote some dumb blurb about it.
Is it on Instagram?
It's on LinkedIn
On
right now.
LinkedIn.
Oh, it is. Did I post on Instagram?
Well,
I
if I
can't remember.
wanted to see it, where would it be?
LinkedIn for sure. There's a
Just
little
Zeck
blurb.
on LinkedIn.
Yeah, Zeck. There's a little blurb about it. And I think a big piece of it is like opening that veil between, you know, posing as something and posing as someone and being, I hate the word authentic because I think it's just overused by right now. So we talk a lot about building relationships. Like we're trying to show this corporate world that we have been in their shoes, we are in their shoes and have been in their shoes, but as normal human beings, and everyone out there is just a normal human being. They might think they have to be in this box of corporate stuffiness, but
Yeah.
really their solution that they're looking for can come from someone like us who has lived what they're going through, found a solution, but is also really relatable. And I think like the relatability of the brands has been just a North Star for us throughout all of the endeavors. So yeah, that's one of our big ones.
Hersh,
Yeah.
I'll give you one example. Oh yeah, there's me at
There's
the,
our-
Don't look,
me at,
Robert.
me
Don't
at the
look. I mean,
post
I talk
office.
That's
about his
Robert in the
outfit.
post office.
That's
It's
right.
very funny, Allison, and I like what I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I like what you wrote as well.
I mean, but if you think about that, any other corporate we're a software, we're a SaaS
Yeah.
platform. So this isn't your traditional marketing strategy for a SaaS platform, but you know, we just do it because that's what makes us laugh and what makes us feel a connection. I think of all these little connection points between people. That's why when you have a great server at a restaurant, you tip them more and you're happy to talk to them and you have an engaging. It's not just transactional. Like we are the opposite of just stopping at being transactional. So whatever we can do, whether we are creating a custom Slack channel with you as a customer and having an experience that you cannot, our line throughout all of our companies has been, we want to give you the best experience. So you tell like 6, no, maybe 7 friends about us. Like that is,
Yeah.
and like Robert said, it organically came that way. And we say that in emails, we're being serious. We're like, we want to give you that level of service. And
Yeah.
the feedback we get from our customers is like mind blowing because most times you go to a service and it kind of stops, you know, like solve the problem, stop. It's like, no, we'll solve the problem. We'll send you cookies. We'll reach out to you a month later because we remembered it was your birthday and we jotted it down. We'll send you something else. Like we really try to layer in our brand and as many touch points as humanly possible.
Well, that's a good point in that as you were talking about, well, we just, most SaaS companies wouldn't do this. And I was thinking to myself, why is it that when certain people are funny, it really resonates for the brand, and when you're an asshole, you it doesn't go over as well. You're an asshole trying to be funny, and I'm not talking about performers who are professionally funny and then assholes in real life. I'm talking about specifically about brands that have a voice that is funny and connects, and you will usually see, and you answered this question, Allison, because you will usually see where this is part of the customer experience. So it's not just a joke or an offhand informality or something like that. It really is part and parcel of the personality of the brand and how they treat the customer. So part of humor is putting people at ease, and that's what you're doing with all of this vibe. And I had a feeling that at the beginning of our conversation would kind of manifest itself in some way. This rapport that immediately was established among the three of us based on the fact that we didn't I had talked to Robert previously, but I had only heard of you and not spoken to you. So we didn't have a automatic rapport, and we didn't use Zeck, so we didn't have the, I don't know that you would have wanted to really go through an
Yeah, no,
extended
that was just an
pre,
analogy.
I know, it was a good analogy, a
That was to
pre-show
paint a
process.
picture.
Yeah. Well, we've been Zekking for 3 months and now you're finally on the Yes Brand podcast. Yeah, I do like the notion of the experience because this is another thing is that with internet publishing with something like this, everybody's experiences are virtual with you.
Right.
Which is the case with obviously many businesses. So their experience has to be memorable. And as you were pointing out, Allison, your brand is engagement. Your engagement with the customer is going to eventually and intentionally have an impact on their real life. It's not something that's going from your computer to their computer. It's really going from you to them. It's just your mode of delivery is the web.
Right.
Um, so where are things at with the brand now? Like what stage of the brand's evolution are you in?
Yeah. So the short answer is we're just getting started. The longer answer is that we are actually building microsites for companies' most serious and most important meetings of the year. So when we launched, we were a little apprehensive about pressing this idea that this should be fun because we didn't want to inject our brand into their microsite. And so we had to figure out what is that delicate balance. So if you go to our homepage, for example, there's a Wedding Crashers quote above the fold, which is great and fun and actually meaningful in terms of what we're trying to convey. But once company X gets on the platform and starts building their board meetings or their investor updates, no one is seeing any of that, right? So it took us a while to figure out how we would interject brand while still maintaining the idea that security, for example, is monumentally important and table stakes, and security on the platform at Zeck is as good as you can get anywhere in the world. How do you talk about that and at the same time have a almost famous quote on your homepage? So we have that there too, right? So it really wasn't until Al came to Zeck earlier this year and started very purposely building that we had that. So we've been doing this a few years. We've really only, if we were doing this same podcast a year ago, we couldn't have talked about any of any of this branding that we're talking about now.
I mean,
Yeah.
so much of it is customer interaction. They see that our platform kicks ass and does exactly what they wish they had found 3 years ago. Same with the giving space. That was that. And then in Moosejaw, you bought a North Face coat. We're not North Face. We're not, we're selling North Face just like North Face made us sell them. But when you got the box, it had tape on it that said no knife, use teeth. And it had a stick and it had a sticker that said signed with, sealed with a kiss. And then our shipper put their name on it. So you were buying a commodity that is packaged in many different ways. But your interaction with us, like I said, the 6 to 7 friends, you might be recommending us because you had a great, memorable interaction with our customer service representative, which we don't call them that. Or you might have had an interaction with us because I stuck a movie quote in an email launching a new feature. And I said, if you got it right, we'll send you an invisible medallion, which we do because it's invisible and it's easy to send via an email. So like
What is the cost to you for those per unit?
we get a really good deal on
You get a
those.
good deal.
They're beautiful though. You
They
can't
are.
see them ever, but they're
Ever.
stunning.
They're stunning, but you get them and people try us, like it's like, are they really going to do that? And then you do. And I just feel like that's another little connection that you make, but no bullshit. Like we love making those connections. That's where I think you went back to the asshole versus the authentic person. Like
Yeah.
that is that is dreamy to someone like myself and Robert, is having a connection and thinking someone got like giggled at their job because we sent them an invisible medallion. We're not doing it because we're like, oh, if we send this to you, you're more likely to buy from us down the
Right.
road. Like that is zero of
No,
how we
it's the
do it.
joy,
It is.
it's the joy of engagement. The funny thing is that we live in an age where we're trying to automate and, make things move so quickly and efficiently that no one ever has to interact with anybody else ever again,
Yeah.
and take ourselves out of everything. And so everything can be, done. And we're relinquishing what to me, I think is the most joyous part of all of this. Getting paid is wonderful, and that happens when good things happen and good products are sold, and people's businesses and their experiences at work improve when they're buying a good product. But that whole customer thing, that that joy is priceless. It really is. And it makes us feel like anybody would, like we did a good job. It's
Mhm.
acknowledgement that our efforts were appreciated. My question is, sometimes when you have a large organization, you know, you still want everybody to use the same brand voice. So let's say everybody who works for Zeck, it's not just they don't all have your sense of humor, Allison. They don't all, have Robert's flair for photography. They're, they're individuals themselves. So how do you
Yeah.
manage that part of the voice?
I mean, that's part of the secret sauce that we don't like to reveal. And we've been working on it for 30 years. So through all our companies. So we do that is something you nailed it. That's really, really hard. And we do have a system in place. We just don't want to tell the world what it is because we don't want
Okay.
anyone to copy it. But I will tell you also, I was what you said just made me think of this. I was on the board of a company, and I probably shouldn't say the name of the company, but it's a $1 billion company. And we were in a meeting. It wasn't a board meeting, but I was invited to a leadership meeting, and everyone was going around the room talking about their numbers. And the CEO stopped, and this was the founder, and he said, "Wait, tell me something that doesn't scale." And his point was that everything everyone was working on was all about going from 10 to a million, and nothing was focused on the customer. And that's the point that he was driving at. Nobody cared about the singular customer that was having the problem that day. It wasn't mentioned at all. And and he started the conversation by saying, tell me something that doesn't scale. But then the whole he kept continuing to dive into is, where did we lose our connection with the customer? And it was really cool to hear this giant company and the CEO sort of stop the room and say, we have to get back to what made us great. So that was that. I don't know how they quite solved it, but it was pretty cool to hear him be so adamant about it.
Yeah, and I think that's where I shake out on, is a company like a person, is a brand, a person, where does the personal brand meet the corporate brand? And I think you just kind of nailed that, Robert, where, it's when the leader, and they can be the founder, more typically they are the founder, but they don't have to be. That could be 100 years from now, the CEO, who just came up under that brand value system and said, "Hey, we're forgetting the customer."
Yeah.
And then again, it goes back to that human element. I'm taking a guess at your system because the as you mentioned, you said something about 30 years. I'm wondering if, perhaps you raise these people as children in in some remote island, and it's kind of like a Spy Kids scenario, and
That's
they're
part of it.
trained, but they're given the best of everything. Their family probably lives with them as well. I'm not suggesting anything untoward or
More like the Oompa Loompas. You know,
Yeah,
I'm
like the
thinking Willy
Oompa
Wonka.
Loompas,
Exactly.
and that's the point.
Yeah,
Because you're rescuing them from the snozwangers and
that's
whatever
right. I
the
think they're
things are.
rescuing me is a more apt description, but I understand your point.
Well, listen, this can be a two-part interview. We can also bring you back when there's other stuff to talk about. When Zeck is in another momentous phase, which I'm sure will be coming. But as I want to give each of you the last word, we'll give Allison the last word. We'll give Robert
Yes.
the first last word. But just for our listeners who are traditionally building their companies, building their brands, definitely care about the process of branding and messaging. A little advice since you've done it so deftly and successfully over the last many years.
Yeah, I think for us, we really try to not believe our own bullshit. And at all our companies, the threshold was what's in it for me from the standpoint of the customer. So even when we were raising our A round, typically page one of your fundraising presentation is about the company. We really tried to flip that. And page one was some version of why should you care? And we feel that same way with every customer interaction. So if we're not hitting that threshold of what's in it for me from the standpoint of the customer, we just don't do it, and we're pretty relentless about it.
I love it. I love it. Allison, how about from your perspective?
I would say I have like pretty much the same amount of fun dealing with customers and externally facing brand projects as I do with interacting internally with staff. And I think that, culture in a company is buzzy and everyone has a ping pong table and has lunches delivered potentially. We just really try to humanize interactions between staff members. And again, this is not intentionally this is not from a business mindset. This is pure. This is just like love talking over Slack about things other than business with our team, love hosting contests, love talking. We do a New York Times connections every day. I think when the brand is built from the base up, then you have just a better chance of every interaction from the customer standpoint being authentic and real and perpetuating the core brand because you're really starting at that level. So I think sometimes that gets a little watered down.
Well, thank you for that. I will also say that I think like so many good examples or good leaders, you both lead by example. You're setting an example for what you want the team to do and you want the customer to experience. And I think that even though those words are great that you both offer, and I hope people listen to them, I think, just the very essence of who you both are and how you bring yourselves to the conversation really conveys that same spirit as well. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. This is easy, fun. Thank you.
All right.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and
it worked for you,
yes, then
subscribe and leave a
yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on
Yes.
before they're gone.
Yes.